Some lies shatter more than trust. They make you question every memory, every shared moment, until you realize the true betrayal isn't just the deception, but how they try to make you doubt your own reality. My name is Cyrus Morris, and I'm 34 years old. Each morning, I wake at 6, make my coffee, and check my carefully organized files, a habit that saved my future. It started with a hotel key card in Sadie's coat pocket. My wife of 5 years had told me she was working late, meeting clients. My hands didn't shake when I found it. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, like my world had shifted into perfect focus. I never expected marriage to end in documentation and legal briefs, but I learned that dignity means choosing evidence over anger, truth over vengeance. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. It was a Tuesday evening when everything changed. I'd just gotten home from work, hanging up Sadie's designer coat, the one she'd started wearing to client dinners that kept her out later and later. Something fell from the pocket, landing with a quiet click on our hardwood floor. A hotel key card, generic white plastic with a blue stripe, the kind you get at mid-range business hotels. My fingers weren't shaking when I picked it up, though they should have been. Instead, an eerie stillness washed over me, like time had stopped while my mind caught up with what my eyes were seeing. You know that moment when a truth you've been avoiding finally steps into the light? The weight of it settled in my chest as I stood there, coat still in one hand, key card in the other. Memories flickered through my mind. Late nights at the office, mysterious lunch meetings, her perfume different when she came home. I placed her coat on its hook with deliberate care. The key card went on our granite kitchen counter, centered perfectly like an exhibit waiting to be presented. Then I sat at our dining room table, where we'd shared thousands of meals, and waited. The sun set. I didn't turn on the lights. Remember when darkness felt safe? When shadows in your home were just familiar shapes, not hiding places for secrets? At 9:47 p.m., I heard her key in the lock. The door opened, spilling light from the hallway into our darkened living room. Sadie's heels clicked against the floor, confident steps that faltered when she saw me sitting there. "Who is he, Sadie?" She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound that scraped against my ears. "What are you talking about?" Her hand found the light switch, flooding the room with harsh fluorescent clarity. "God, Cyrus, were you just sitting here in the dark?" "That's a little dramatic, don't you think?" I didn't move from my chair. "You're deflecting. Answer the question." "This is ridiculous." She dropped her purse on the counter, then froze when she spotted the key card. "Are you going through my things now? You're being insecure." "Am I?" I kept my voice steady, even as my pulse quickened. "Then explain the card." Her eyes darted to my phone on the table, then back to my face. Something cold crept into her expression, a look I'd never seen before, like a mask slipping. "You know what your problem is, Cyrus?" She took a step closer. "You always need everything to make perfect sense. Everything has to fit in its little box." Then she moved, faster than I could process. Her hand shot out, fingers clamping around my throat. The shock wasn't just physical. It was the realization that the woman I'd shared my life with could turn violent in an instant. Black spots bloomed at the edges of my vision. My lungs burned. I pried at her fingers, finally breaking her grip and stumbling backward into the hallway. Air rushed back into my chest in painful gasps. As I reached for my phone with trembling hands, one thought crystallized through the chaos. There was no going back from this moment. The betrayal had become physical, undeniable, and I had to decide what to do next. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers, my voice rasping as I reported the assault. "My wife just attacked me," I managed, keeping my tone even despite the burning in my throat. "I need officers at—" The dispatcher's calm questions anchored me as I retreated further down the hallway, watching Sadie's shadow pace in the kitchen. Remember how surreal emergency situations feel? How time stretches like taffy while you're waiting for help? Those minutes felt endless. 2 patrol cars arrived within 12 minutes, their silent red and blue lights painting our suburban home in alternate splashes of color. Officer Chen took my statement while her partner spoke with Sadie. I described finding the key card, the confrontation, the attack, each detail preserved in careful sequence. The fluorescent kitchen lights made the developing bruises on my neck stand out stark and unmistakable. "Sir, we'd like to photograph the injuries." Officer Chen said, gesturing to her body camera. I nodded, turning my head to give her clear angles of the marks. Sadie watched from across the room, her face a mask of ice, arms crossed tight against her chest. The clicking of the camera felt like validation, proof that I wasn't crazy, that this had really happened. Something my father once said floated back to me. The truth doesn't need volume to be heard. The memory steadied my hands as I wrote out my statement. I called Adam just before midnight. He'd been my friend since college, long before he became an attorney, and I knew he'd understand the weight of what I was asking. I need your help, was all I had to say. 20 minutes later, he was at my door in jeans and a rumpled dress shirt, legal pad already in hand. Let's get this documented properly, he said, sitting at my kitchen table, the same spot where I'd confronted Sadie hours earlier. The familiar scratch of his pen across paper grounded me as he drafted the protective order. Adam had always been methodical, but now I saw how that trait served his clients. Each detail mattered. Each timestamp could make a difference. We'll file this first thing in the morning, he said, sliding the completed forms across to me. For now, you've got the house. The police report backs up your statement, and these photos are clear evidence of assault. He squeezed my shoulder. You did the right thing, Sai. You kept your head. After Adam left, I stood in my silent kitchen, staring at my phone. How many nights had Sadie called to say she'd be working late? How many lies had I accepted because trust felt safer than doubt? The house felt too big, too empty with all those questions echoing off the walls. I slept fitfully, waking to gray dawn light filtering through the blinds. For one blessed moment, everything felt normal, until my throat twinged and reality crashed back in. I was making coffee when Adam called. Cyrus, she's filed an emergency petition. His voice was tight with controlled anger. She's claiming you abused her, demanding exclusive occupancy of the house. We need to respond immediately. The mug slipped from my hand, shattering against the tile. Hot coffee splashed my feet, but I barely felt it. Yesterday's relief evaporated as I realized this wasn't the end of the fight. It was just the beginning. I sat across from Adam in his office the next morning, watching him read through Sadie's emergency petition. My coffee sat untouched, gone cold while we dissected her claims line by line. The leather chair creaked as I shifted, trying to contain the anger building in my chest. She's claiming I was controlling? My voice stayed level, but my hands clenched. After what she did? Adam looked up, his expression grim. It's a common tactic. She's requesting exclusive occupancy of the house and control of all joint accounts. He tapped his pen against the papers. But here's the thing, Sai. Lies leave traces. We just need to follow them. The methodical way he said it helped steady me. I remembered sorting baseball cards with him in college, how he'd always categorize them by year before team. That same attention to detail would serve us now. Where do we start? I asked. Bank records first, then phone logs, and you mentioned you have home security cameras? I nodded. Installed them last year when we had those break-ins on the block. Perfect. But before we get to that, Adam pulled out a fresh legal pad. Walk me through your joint accounts, credit cards, everything financial. For the next 2 hours, we built a spreadsheet of our finances. Adam's assistant brought in statements we'd subpoenaed, and patterns emerged. A credit card I'd never seen, opened 6 months ago in Sadie's name. Hotel charges, restaurant bills for 2 at times she'd claimed to be working late. Look at this, Adam said, highlighting a series of calls on her phone records. Who's Harvey Brooks? Her coworker. The name felt bitter on my tongue. She mentioned him a few times. Project manager or something. Adam circled a cluster of timestamps. These calls all after 11 p.m., some lasting over an hour. He looked up at me. And they align with those hotel charges. Each new piece of evidence was like a fresh cut, but I forced myself to focus on documentation rather than pain. The truth was ugly, but it was also ammunition. We need it all cataloged, Adam insisted, spreading papers across his desk. Every charge, every call, every inconsistency. When we present this at mediation, it needs to be bulletproof. By evening, my eyes were burning from scanning documents, but we had a solid timeline of Sadie's deception. There was just one piece left. Let's see the security footage, Adam said. Back at my house, we sat at my computer while I pulled up the CCTV recordings. The timestamp showed yesterday's date. The kitchen looked normal, peaceful even, until Sadie walked in. I watched our confrontation unfold in silence, saw myself place the key card down, saw her lunge for my phone. Then her hands were at my throat. "Jesus," Adam muttered. The camera's angle captured everything: the attack, my retreat, the calm way I'd called 911, even the officers' arrival and their documentation of my injuries. It was all there, undeniable. "This is it," Adam said, pausing the playback. "Between this footage, the financial records, and those phone logs, we've got what we need for mediation." I stared at the frozen image on my screen, at the stranger my wife had become. "When?" "Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Adam gathered his notes. "Get some rest, Cy. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." The mediation room felt too small, its beige walls closing in as I took my seat across from Sadie. The conference table between us might as well have been an ocean. Adam sat beside me, his briefcase open, while Sadie's attorney whispered something in her ear. She wore the blue blazer I'd given her last Christmas, and for a moment, the memory of that morning, her smile as she opened the box, threatened to knock me off balance. I remembered what Adam had said: "Stay focused on the facts." The mediator introduced herself, but I barely heard the words, my attention fixed on the manila folder in front of me, containing weeks of documented betrayal. When the mediator invited opening statements, I didn't wait for Adam's signal. "I'd like to present some evidence," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The folder made a soft sound as I opened it, spreading bank statements and phone logs across the polished wood. "This is what you did." Sadie's eyes flickered over the papers, recognition dawning. Her perfectly maintained composure cracked like thin ice. "You made me do it," she whispered, fingers trembling as she pushed the documents away. I remembered countless dinners eaten alone, believing she was working late. All those nights, she'd been with him. The thought tightened my chest, but I kept my voice level. "No one made you do anything. If you hadn't been so..." Tears welled in her eyes, right on cue. I'd seen this performance before, the way she could summon emotion like turning on a faucet. "If you'd been exciting, if you'd given me what I needed..." "I won't carry your choices," I cut her off, sliding another statement forward. "These are your decisions, your credit card, your hotel charges." Her attorney leaned forward, scanning the documents with growing concern. Sadie's tears vanished, replaced by something harder. "You're trying to trap me." "The evidence speaks for itself," Adam interjected, his tone professional but firm. He produced additional copies for the mediator and opposing counsel. "We also have security footage from their home showing the assault." The mediator reviewed everything carefully while Sadie's mask slipped further. She shot me a look of pure venom, but I held her gaze. I wouldn't let her make me doubt myself again. "These exhibits will be admitted," the mediator announced after what felt like hours. "And given the nature of the assault evidence, I'm obligated to forward this to the district attorney's office." Sadie's attorney requested a break, but the damage was done. The mediator had seen the truth, and no amount of tears or accusations could erase it. The temporary occupancy order came through as we left the courthouse. Adam handed me the paperwork, sunlight glinting off his wedding ring, a reminder that some marriages were built on trust that lasted. "You can go home," he said simply. Relief washed over me, but it felt fragile. Standing on the courthouse steps, watching Sadie storm toward her car with her attorney trailing behind, I knew this victory was just the beginning. "Thank you," I told Adam, meaning it for more than just the legal work. 2 weeks after mediation, Adam called with news that made my coffee go cold. Harvey Brooks had been subpoenaed. The name I'd seen countless times in phone records would finally have a face. "He's scheduled for deposition tomorrow," Adam said. 10 a.m. I remembered the countless client dinners Sadie had attended, how she'd come home with that particular spring in her step. The memory of her perfume lingering in the entryway as she'd brush past me, claiming exhaustion from work commitments. Every lie had a timestamp now, documented in those phone logs. The deposition room felt like a pressure cooker the next morning. I sat beside Adam, watching the door. When Harvey Brooks walked in, I wasn't prepared for how normal he looked. Well-groomed professional attire, the kind of guy you'd pass in any office without a second glance. His eyes met mine briefly before darting away, shame written across his features. Sadie arrived moments later, taking a seat across the table. She straightened her jacket with familiar precision, but I caught the slight tremor in her hands. Something about seeing them both in the same room made everything painfully real. The court reporter swore Harvey in, and Adam began his questioning. "Mr. Brooks, please state your relationship with Sadie Morris." Harvey cleared his throat. "We met at work about 8 months ago. We became involved." And were you aware of Mrs. Morris's marital status? The silence felt heavy. Harvey's face tightened. No, I had no idea she was married. His voice cracked slightly. She told me she was divorced. I watched Sadie's perfectly maintained expression slip for just a moment. She'd always been good at controlling her face, but this crack showed something raw beneath. When did you discover the truth? Adam continued. Last week. Harvey's tone hardened. I saw the domestic violence charge in the court records. That's when I really started digging. He turned to look directly at Sadie. I found everything. The marriage license, the property records, the assault charges. He shook his head. I've already requested a department transfer. I want nothing to do with any of this. Sadie's composure crumbled completely. Harvey? No. He cut her off, something cold and final in his voice. You lied to everyone. You're facing criminal charges. I won't be dragged into your mess. I watched the woman I'd once loved transform into someone I barely recognized. Her face twisted with bitterness as the last piece of her carefully constructed world fell apart. The man she'd chosen over our marriage was abandoning her, leaving her to face the consequences alone. I won't be the one who ends up ruined, she spat, pushing back from the table. This isn't over. Her attorney whispered something urgent, but she was already stalking toward the door. It slammed behind her with enough force to make the water glasses rattle. Harvey Brooks slumped slightly, looking drained. I'm sorry, he said, addressing me directly for the first time. If I'd known... I just nodded. His testimony had confirmed what I'd already known. Sadie's capacity for deception ran deeper than I'd imagined. But watching her storm out, those final words echoing, I couldn't shake the feeling that she had more moves left to play. We need everything, Adam said, spreading papers across his desk. Every second of footage, every timestamp, every document that shows exactly what happened that night. His tie was loosened, and 3 empty coffee cups testified to the late hour. I nodded, my throat tightening as I remembered Sadie's fingers there. The CCTV system records continuously. No gaps. Perfect. I'm submitting subpoenas for the complete footage from every camera in your house, starting 2 hours before the incident through to when the police left. Adam's pen scratched across legal paper. We'll also get the ER records to document your injuries. The memory of that hospital visit surfaced. The harsh fluorescent lights, the gentle nurse photographing the bruising around my neck. They did a thorough workup, I said. Documented everything. Good. Between the CCTV and medical records, we'll have an airtight timeline. Adam leaned back, studying me. You okay with watching the footage again? We'll need to review it thoroughly. Was I okay with it? My hands clenched involuntarily. I have to be. The next morning, we sat in a conference room as the footage played. The crystal-clear video showed Sadie entering the house, our conversation in the kitchen. Then came the moment, her sudden lunge, hands shooting toward my throat. I forced myself to watch, even as my pulse quickened. Look at your response, Adam said quietly. No aggressive moves, no threatening gestures. You simply defended yourself and retreated. He was right. The footage showed me breaking free, backing away, pulling out my phone. My voice on the 911 call was steady, controlled. I need to report an assault. My wife just tried to strangle me. The timestamps aligned perfectly with the ER records. Admission time, photos of the developing bruises, doctor's notes describing consistent with manual strangulation. No gaps, no ambiguity, no room for alternative interpretations. Adam organized it all chronologically. CCTV footage showing the assault at 8:47 p.m., 911 call at 8:49 p.m., police arrival at 8:56 p.m., ER admission at 9:38 p.m. This demolishes any claim of self-defense or provocation, he said. The evidence speaks for itself. When Sadie's attorney received our evidence package, they requested an immediate meeting. I sat across from her again, watching her face as Adam played selected clips. The color drained from her cheeks as she watched herself attack me, her own actions captured in high definition. Her attorney spoke in hushed tones, but I caught phrases like overwhelming evidence and consider plea options. Sadie's shoulders slumped, her carefully constructed defenses crumbling against the weight of irrefutable truth. Later that afternoon, the DA called. The footage makes this case clear-cut, she said. We're moving forward with formal charges. I should have felt triumph. Instead, exhaustion settled over me as I realized how many more times I'd have to watch that footage, reliving those moments in courtroom after courtroom. But the evidence was solid, undeniable. For the first time since finding that hotel keycard, I felt the ground truly steady beneath my feet. "The truth doesn't need defending," Adam said, closing his briefcase. "It just needs to be shown." The criminal courthouse loomed before us, its stone facade cold in the morning light. Adam adjusted his tie as we climbed the steps, his briefcase heavy with the evidence we'd gathered. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, though my stomach churned. The memory of better days hit me unexpectedly. Sadie and I celebrating our first home purchase over cheap champagne, both of us giddy with dreams of the future. Now here we were, about to face each other across a criminal courtroom. Inside, the polished wooden benches felt hard and unforgiving. Adam and I sat directly behind the prosecutor, while Sadie's attorney whispered urgently in her ear. Sadie wore a conservative gray suit, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't look at me once. The judge entered and we rose. As the charges were read, domestic battery, assault with intent to cause bodily harm, I watched Sadie's shoulders tense. Her attorney stepped forward, attempting to negotiate the charges down to simple assault. "Your Honor," the DA interrupted, rising. "The state wishes to present additional evidence before considering any reduction in charges." My throat tightened as the familiar footage played on the courtroom screens. The CCTV video was stark in its clarity. Sadie's sudden violence, my retreat, the steady 911 call. Medical photos followed, documenting angry red marks around my neck. The timeline was irrefutable. The judge's expression hardened as she reviewed the evidence. Given the severity of the assault and the clear premeditation shown in the defendant's actions, the state's original charges stand. How does the defendant plead? A heavy silence filled the courtroom. Sadie's attorney leaned close, speaking softly but urgently. Finally, Sadie stood, her voice barely audible. "No contest, Your Honor." The judge nodded grimly. "Based on the evidence presented and the defendant's plea, this court sentences the defendant to 90 days in county jail for misdemeanor domestic battery." My chest constricted as two deputies approached Sadie. She offered her wrists mechanically, the click of handcuffs echoing in the quiet courtroom. For a moment, our eyes finally met. I searched for any trace of the woman I'd married, but found only a stranger's cold stare. "All rise," the bailiff called. As Sadie was led away, I remained seated, suddenly exhausted. Victory felt hollow, tasting of ash and lost years. Adam's hand landed on my shoulder, steadying. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "She made her choices. These are the consequences." Outside, camera flashes sparked at the courthouse steps. Local news vans clustered near the entrance, hungry for the story of a domestic violence case with gender expectations upended. I glimpsed tomorrow's headlines in my mind. Successful businesswoman jailed for assaulting husband. Sadie's carefully curated reputation would shatter like glass. Adam guided me toward a side exit. "The family court date is next week," he reminded me. "We need to stay focused." I nodded, squaring my shoulders. One battle won, but the war for my home and future wasn't over. The evidence that had secured criminal conviction would serve again in family court, but I knew better than to celebrate yet. Walking to the car, I touched my throat where Sadie's fingers had left their mark. The bruises had long since faded, but some scars run deeper than skin. Justice had been served, yet part of me mourned for what was lost, not just my marriage, but my faith in happy endings. 3 weeks after Sadie's criminal sentencing, I found myself back in the same courthouse, this time in family court. The familiar weight of documentation filled my briefcase: bank statements, property deeds, and the freshly minted conviction papers that had changed everything. "Remember," Adam said as we waited in the hallway, "let the evidence speak for itself." I remembered long nights at our kitchen table, the ones Sadie and I had picked out together at that little antique shop in Vermont. We'd spent hours tracing every dollar she'd hidden, every lie she'd told. The secret credit card statements read like a diary of betrayal: hotel charges, expensive dinners, gifts I'd never known about. Inside the courtroom, Sadie sat with her attorney, her jail-issued bracelet still visible beneath her sleeve. She'd lost weight, her designer suit hanging loose at the shoulders. Her eyes stayed fixed on her hands, refusing to acknowledge my presence. Adam presented our case methodically, his voice steady as he laid out the financial evidence. "Your Honor, the respondent's actions, both the documented infidelity and criminal conviction, directly contributed to the dissolution of this marriage. Furthermore, her attempts to manipulate the court through false allegations of abuse demonstrate a pattern of deception that should preclude any claim to alimony. The judge reviewed the records carefully, pausing at the bank statements showing Sadie's hidden accounts. And the property in question? The house was purchased primarily with my inheritance, I explained when prompted. We have documentation showing the source of the down payment. Sadie's attorney attempted to argue for an equitable split, but her words felt hollow against the weight of evidence before us. I noticed Harvey's absence in the gallery, the empty seats behind Sadie telling their own story. The man she'd thrown away our marriage for hadn't bothered to show up, even as a spectator. The judge removed her glasses, fixing Sadie with a direct stare. Having reviewed all evidence presented, this court finds in favor of the petitioner. Mr. Morris shall retain full ownership of the marital home and control of all accounts. Given the respondent's actions and subsequent conviction, no alimony will be awarded. The divorce is hereby granted. The gavel's crack echoed through the courtroom. Sadie's shoulders slumped, the last of her composure crumbling. For a moment, I remembered the woman who'd once shared my dreams, who'd helped pick out paint colors and planted roses in our garden. That woman was gone now, replaced by a stranger who'd gambled everything on lies and lost it all. Adam gathered our papers while Sadie's attorney whispered urgently in her ear. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of the past year lifting. The house keys in my pocket seemed heavier somehow, knowing they were now solely mine. You did well, Adam said quietly as we walked toward the door. It's over. I glanced back one last time. Sadie sat alone at the defendant's table, her attorney already departing. No Harvey rushing to comfort her, no friends offering support. She'd burned every bridge in her desperate attempt to maintain control, and now she faced the consequences in solitude. The victory felt complete but hollow. Criminal conviction, financial security, and the house all secured. Yet watching Sadie's isolation, I felt no triumph, only a deep exhaustion and the quiet certainty that some broken things can never be repaired. The late afternoon sun streamed through freshly cleaned windows as I unlocked my front door. My front door. The thought still felt strange, but in a good way now. Like discovering an old favorite shirt fits better than before. I set my briefcase down, hearing it echo slightly in rooms that had grown used to holding their breath. For months, this house had been a battlefield of paperwork and memories. Now it was just mine. The silence wrapped around me like a welcomed friend rather than the suffocating presence it had been during the worst days. Yesterday, I'd finally done what I'd been putting off. Bought a solid oak table for the kitchen. Nothing fancy or antique, just honest craftsmanship with clean lines. The sun caught its surface now, warming the wood to a honey glow that reminded me of Sunday mornings at my grandfather's farm, where every piece of furniture told a story of time well spent. Walking to the entryway, I pulled the new brass key from my pocket. It caught the light, throwing tiny sparkles against the wall where I'd installed a simple hook that morning. Such a small thing, really, just metal and brass. But as I hung it there, the soft clink against the wall felt like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence. I thought about Sadie, sitting alone in that courtroom. The designer suit that hung wrong on her frame, the jail bracelet she couldn't quite hide, the empty seats where Harvey Brooks should have been if he'd meant even half of what she'd risked everything for. She'd played a game of double stakes, betting our marriage against the promise of something more exciting. Now she had neither, and Harvey had vanished back to his own life without so much as a farewell glance. The DA had sent me the final report yesterday. Sadie would serve her time, then face the aftermath of a life dismantled by her own choices. No home to return to, no joint accounts to drain, no husband to manipulate, no lover waiting in the wings, just consequences lined up like dominoes she'd knocked down herself. Standing in my quiet kitchen, I ran my hand across the new table's surface. The old one had held too many memories, late-night fights disguised as discussions, the sound of that hotel keycard hitting its surface, the moment I'd realized my wife had become a stranger. This one would hold different stories, better ones. I could have raged, could have matched Sadie's deception with destruction of my own. But I'd chosen evidence over emotion, documentation over drama. When she'd tried to paint me as the villain, I'd answered with time-stamped footage and bank records. While she'd spun stories, I'd built boundaries. The sunlight shifted, drawing long shadows across the floor. In the distance, a neighbor's wind chime caught a gentle breeze, its soft notes drifting through an open window. For the first time in months, I felt the truth of what I'd learned settle into place, solid as the oak beneath my fingers. You know what I discovered through all this? Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're how love for yourself survives. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.